How's everybody doing? Okay, that was good. You guys are learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody actually gave me a response to that question. All right. Are we ready, Carl? All right. Bear with me. I'm sorry I'm late, first of all. I was dealing with some internal issue. Well, good afternoon. For those of you who may not know, I'm Sheriff Lombardo of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I'm here today to discuss the release of the 1 October After Action Review that was prepared by the Lvmpd Internal Oversight and Constitutional Policing Bureau. With me today are the authors of the report. To my right, your left would be Captain Kelly McMahill and Detective Stephanie Ward. They were instrumental in the early fruitions of the report, the start of the report, the process through it, actually writing the report, and the comprehensive review of the report. So as we get through the completion of this press conference, I will take the opportunity to answer some questions, and any complex or detailed oriented questions can be answered by these two capable folks, all right? Today's report is not to be confused with the comprehensive criminal investigative report that was released in August of 2018. So as you are fully aware, we did a investigative report for the criminal actions of the suspect Paddock, and we released that comprehensive report in August of 2018. Subsequent that, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Association, came to our department and completed a after-action report. And that was more of a global report for the total response of all the public safety community within the valley. Today's report, this 1 October After Action Review, is more comprehensive to Lvmpd's preparedness, response, and recovery as a result of 1 October. So hopefully that clarifies any confusion to those aspects. So why did we do the report? I think us in law enforcement, and I personally believe it's our duty to identify lessons learned as a result of a critical incident such as 1 October, and to act on those lessons learned to better our agency and better prepare the community for any future events. Additionally, I think it's important for us to provide answers to all of public safety and law enforcement specific across the nation on these type of incidents and what would better help them in any future possible incidents that they may encounter. Our 18-month review looked at three major questions. Were we prepared? What is our response? And how was our recovery? So as you can imagine, in a three-pronged approach, were we prepared before any incident occurred? And when an incident does occur, how did we respond to that incident? And then the eventual completion of the critical dynamic part of the incident, moving into the static portion in the recovery and the community's recovery as a result of the incident. So to do that, Lvmpd team waded through countless crime scene photos, over 500 officer reports, conducted over 650 interviews, listened to more than 4,900 dispatch calls, and watched over 3,100 body-worn camera videos in order to answer those questions. The Lvmpd review team was helped by the Clark County Fire Department, Henderson Police, North Las Vegas Police, Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, FEMA, the ATF, and the FBI. What were the key strengths identified? And this is my opinion. You may have your own opinion after you review the report or go through that. But personally, I believe the partnerships that we forged with Southern Nevada first responders helped us serve our citizens that chaotic night. Regular multi-agency training exercise no doubt saved lives that night. And communicating with our network of private security workers resulted in the lockdown of key properties on the Strip within minutes. We know that what we learned today will provide a roadmap for future first responders and leaders, and there should ever be a large-scale incident again. This 158-page report with 93 recommendations approximately 40% which have already been implemented. The 40% were identified early and needed to be acted on without the benefit of a report. So as you can imagine, it would be malpractice for us to wait 18 months to, once we've identified some key issues in response to a critical incident, not to act on them immediately. And that's the result of the 40%. So the remainder of the 60% are things that we have identified through the process, and that will take a little bit of time for the Bureau commanders and responsible folks to complete those tasks. An example being making sure high-rise structures that face open-air venues are secure, implementing expanded training to address elevated threats to include rifle training, extra supplies of trauma kits at major events, and the presence of fire commanders at large-scale events. I won't go through all the recommendations, but I can say there have been some important changes that have been put into motion as a result of our findings, such as we found we need to coordinate more closely with the Clark County Coroner's Office, fire departments, hospital administrators to develop a plan for victim identification and next of kin notification. I don't know if you can recall the details as at post-event of 1 October. We had a very difficult time consolidating the names and the type of injuries and the approximate location of the injuries in close proximity of the event. So when I had approached the public through the press conference venue, you're fully aware those number of injuries and fatalities changed on each press conference. So I think the process of identifying those folks, providing more accurate information post-event is imperative for the public understanding of what we're going through. Continually refining a process by meeting once a year with all our key stakeholders, and the creation of a major case squad made up of experts in every part of this agency. This squad will handle mass casualty incidents and high-profile incidents that require a squad to work the case 24/7. We've utilized the major case squad here recently. Unfortunately, a young lady was a victim of a sexual assault up in the Northwest Area Command, and we implemented the major case squad to have a 24/7 investigative function and response and eventual arrest of a suspect because of that. So it works. In the early throes of 1 October, everybody's familiar, the bifurcation of the force investigation team conducting an investigation up at the 32nd floor, and our homicide detail doing an investigation out at Route 91 location. That was questioned whether that was appropriate or not. I provided some explanation as to the reasoning behind that, but as a result of that dilemma, the major case investigation profile and policy will be implemented in all future incidents that we determine to be a major case. All right. So I think one of the biggest takeaways from this review in that each agency we work with side by side with is resolute in maintaining a strong working relationship. So it's no secret that the Raiders are coming on board. That's another major venue, major incident where we're going to require the utilization of resources provided by North Las Vegas and Henderson PD in any future major events that we feel appropriate. It's important for us to know everybody's tactics and training and response ability to assist us in those type of events. So that's the reason why I believe that's the biggest takeaway. And we're all familiar with North Las Vegas having a new police chief and Henderson having a new police chief, and it's incumbent upon me as the head of Lvmpd to foster that relationship and ensure that we're working symbiotic in anything that we have to deal with. Again, we hope we never have to use these procedures that we are putting in place, but we owe the public an assurance that we will always place their safety and well-being first. Now that this report is complete, the findings will be incorporated in our active shooter and reality-based training for our officers. We will also use it as a source material for promotional exams to ensure future leaders understand the importance of knowing the lessons learned. That's a key component, in my opinion. So as our leaders, is that me? Okay. As our leaders move through what we do as a police agency and decide to promote, I think it's important for them to digest this document. It is going to be mandatory for all sergeants and above to digest this document to benefit themselves personally and the department and the community in the lessons learned from this thing. And additionally, it's important for people making that leap to promote and lead people, especially during critical incidents, to understand what could be the failures that occurred during the incident and address those immediately and respond to them in a better fashion. Following the conclusion of the press conference, the report will be made public and posted on lvmpd.com's website, and we will also send a follow-up press release along with a link to the report. I'm sure one of the questions will be, are you going to address this body in the future as you progress through the recommendations? And I will. If you recall the DOJ report on how we respond and do use of force, critical deadly use of force, we did provide you a continual response on our progress in addressing those particular issues on an ongoing basis. So I want to thank you for being here today and give me the opportunity to address you, and I will take this time to answer any questions that you may have. Hey guys.
When was the report completed?
Well, it was completed, I would safely say a month ago. Well, actually it was completed well before that, Rachel, but we went through corrections, syntax, grammar, and all those. We went back and forth on that for quite a while, so I was comfortable saying a month ago, and then we had to get it published, brought together and published. So it's been about a month.
Publication about a month ago?
Yeah, it's ready. No, it's ready for publication a week ago. So, but it was completed approximately a month ago.
Does the report address disciplinary actions or lessons learned in disciplinary actions against officers in the department?
No, it doesn't. Those are internal processes that are identified, and I don't comment, as you know, I don't comment on personnel actions.
A follow-up question, slightly different. Of the 650 interviews, 4,900 dispatch calls, 500 police reports, and 3,100 body-worn cameras videos, is that the material that has already been released to the public?
Carla, you would have to be better served to answer that question. I don't know. I can't answer on the finality of those numbers or the completeness of those numbers I provide you today, but the items that were part of the public information request have been provided, and that has been completed. So is one for one the example? I don't know. We'd have to do a comprehensive review of that. I guess the question you're asking, Ken, is everything that we released to the media and the public, is it the same as what we reviewed for the report?
Well put for the question, yeah. That's to boil it down. So, and you're saying yes?
Yes.
So there's about 40% of your notes that have already been implemented. Is there a timeline for the other 60%, or the points that you say are in this?
I'll give Captain McMahill the opportunity to answer that question. Kelly?
Do I need to step up?
Yeah,
there?
come on up.
Yes.
So the answer to that, and I'll be very clear, it's 47% exactly that are completed today. Those are, of those 40%, those are the life-saving measures that we knew we had to take immediately. The remaining 60-odd% are almost purely administrative, so policies that need to be refined, bureau manuals that need to be updated. So those pieces take time to write, to review, and make it through the process. In addition, there's several pieces in here that touch on technology that, quite frankly, not only take time to find the correct technology if it exists, but then pay for it. So there's a financial aspect to many of these recommendations. So it's very difficult for me to say we'll have these done in a certain time period. To the sheriff's point, and thank you for letting me answer this question, the great thing about this organization is that I'm sure that we'll update you fairly routinely on where we are with the remaining 60%.
Captain?
So as a part of building on what she just said, so bi-monthly, we have a report out from the OIO Office of Internal Oversight twice a month on the status of each one of those recommendations.
Will we be able to identify in the report the 40% of the recommendations that have already been implemented?
No, we don't provide you, we're not providing you with a Gantt chart associated with that. We could do that individually with you if you would like, but no, that's not in the report.
Sheriff, does the report break down response when it comes to SWAT and then also the officers who are out there on the field when it comes to their response time? And secondly, does that provide a situation that shows where is it better for those frontline officers to respond right away or for SWAT, for them to wait for SWAT, for example? And I know SWAT had a limited radio communication.
Well, I'll answer your first question first. Yes, and no, there is no recommendation to wait on SWAT. That paradigm has changed years ago as a result of the active shooters that have taken place across the United States. We train our officers, once they have a sufficient number of officers available, it's usually 3 or more, they're trained to act immediately against the threat. We no longer wait and identify SWAT as the responding element or complement in those situations.
Sheriff, you said you're going to have every officer, sergeant, and above learn this. You also produce this in hopes of providing insight to other agencies. Do you call it a textbook for an event such as this?
That's a good question, Ken. I wouldn't say it's a textbook because that's usually based on subject matter experts and footnotes and everything else along with it. It's our textbook per se, for lack of a better nomenclature to describe it as, but it's our textbook on our response, okay? Every critical incident response has their own dynamics. You know, Pulse nightclub is a completely different response than 1 October. So anything that you can imagine or you can bring back through history, some of the details are going to be a little bit different in every situation. But the overarching response, yes. The answer to that question is yes. It would be a benefit to any police agency dealing with any critical incident.
Given a police agency that's not able to see it immediately or review it, can you say the top 5 things that we should know or learn?
Yeah, first and foremost is command and control. As you can imagine, the number of people that respond to that type of incidents, we have people self-dispatching, over-convergence of resources. Command and control is critical in that aspect. The training you have prior to an event is critical, so your officers know what to do without hesitation in acting on these type of events. The tactics deployed on this type of event, you know, something as simple as sniper overwatch in outdoor events and facing rooms associated with the type of event and equipment that would help your officers be more successful and your medical personnel be more successful in this type of response. An example being on the medical personnel, I had mentioned fire command being present. We implemented, it's more of an MOU versus an NRS. So any special event that has 15,000 attendees or more, we require fire command personnel to be present to assist us with response of medical personnel and fire personnel in case of a critical incident. Prior to 1 October, we didn't have that policy or procedure. Trauma kits, we had trauma kits available for our officers in a small scale event. Now that we experienced 1 October, trauma kits are overabundant now and readily available for our officers to deploy.
And is this going out to other agencies, the fire department, HPD, all that?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I had mentioned the FEMA report. That was more fire concentric in that report. This is more police concentric. But we're partners in response to critical incidents now. In years past, fire department didn't stand next to us and respond to the wounded or the injured until we completely secured a scene. Now they stand next to us in a MACTAC type environment in response to those critical incidents. Rachel?
I realize this may be in the report, but when you were talking earlier about guidance for patrol officers or just any officers other than SWAT in relation to an active shooter incident, you were saying that department trains officers to act immediately, usually if there's 3 or more officers around. But in terms of this report, are there any additional guidance or recommendations for officers in that situation? Has that policy changed in any way?
No, it hasn't changed in its core or its foundation, but it does make some recommendations on better response in that aspect. I think it'd be hard for me to explain verbally. I think it's more comprehensive if you read it.
Sheriff, how do you plan to continue to train with all of the different law enforcement agencies so you can continue to get better at standing side by side in a situation like this?
That's a great question, and here's why it's a great question. For any of you that's ever been in the military, you constantly train, correct? And you constantly train thinking, this may never happen. You're not engaged, you're distance, you're just going by the numbers and checklists. Now, as a result of 1 October, people are more engaged, they're more enthusiastic, they're less apathetic associated with the training. They understand the reason why. It's unfortunate circumstances for that to occur, but it rises to a higher level for each one of our officers to understand why we doing what we're doing. Because quite often your training is related to a low frequency event, which is 1 October. That's a low frequency, that's a one-off event. But your training has to be comprehensive enough for them to understand this could happen. Now we don't have to try to coach them in that aspect. They understand it, and they're willing to participate as a result of it.
Will there be more events though, like I know DPS had an active shooter training cross-agency across the valley, participate in that in the end of December?
Yeah, and don't get lost. We did that type of training prior to 1 October, but it's going to happen more often now. And it was probably, I'm comfortable saying once a year we did a regional type training, tabletop and practical exercise. Now that type training will happen more often than not.
18 months out, how would you rate your department's response?
I said it 1 month out. Actually, I probably said it a week out, but I'll say it the same today. I think our response was heroic. I think we did a fantastic job in what we did for an event that nobody could have what-ifed. Yeah, you get the naysayers and the self-proclaimed experts out there in the cyber world that say, well, you should have prepared for this. Come on, folks. This was never in anybody's thought process or paradigm. I think as a result of what we did experience in the short proximity of our response to the threat, I think we did a fantastic job. And I won't sway from that. You can ask me another year from now, and I'll give you the same answer. Rachel.
I just want to ask, I know you cited the Northwest sexual assault case as an example of this major case investigative group.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know about how many times it has been implemented since it?
You know what, I would be remiss in trying to guess, and I personally know at least 3 times.
Do you know about when it was officially implemented?
No. We can get you that answer because I know we policized it, and but I can't give it. I don't know the exact answer right now.
Sheriff, because we don't see you as often as we might like.
Well, you got to get out in the public more.
I know you are. I'm going to come back to that discipline question.
Okay.
You said those things are handled internally. Can you tell us results? We know, for instance, cases where body cameras were turned off. Turning off the camera now says others. Another important, perhaps, incident or would be the inadvertent shooting in the room. Were officers disciplined on circumstances like those?
Yes. And all identified discipline has already been identified. I guess that's an oxymoron. But we've already identified all discipline associated with 1 October, and discipline has been met out.
I compounded my question. I apologize.
No.
I should ask specifically of the officer shooting in the room
Yes, that individual's been disciplined.
and officers who,
That's a matter of normal practice.
and officers who did not turn on body-worn cameras.
Yes. We have a matrix, and I'm sure hopefully you're very familiar with our matrix associated enacting or activating a body-worn camera and the discipline associated with that.
We know of 2 officers who were dismissed, one who got a job back. Are there any other pending actions?
No, I believe we're in arbitration on one officer now. So,
That was two, I think.
yeah, I'm sure that's the direction you're going.
You should.
Given everything in the report, how do you feel today versus 1 October? Do you feel like the department is significantly more prepared than it was then?
That's a tough word to answer significantly. The answer for me as the head of the agency is yes, we are more prepared significantly. I think we responded greatly. Okay, so there's going to be some small increments that we need to improve upon. Example being equipment, and Rachel, you'll appreciate this as far as the radio system. Yeah, I mean, there's not a radio system in the world that can handle that many push-to-talk transmissions all at one time. But where we did identify is the failure within the structures such as a casino environment. So everything built after 2005 has those technology placed into the structure of the edifice, and we don't have that particular issue with radio transmission. Mandalay Bay, I believe, I don't know, somebody knows it probably better than me, was prior to that, and so the NRS was addressed where it forces them to put a bidirectional antenna within the facilities. I don't want to get too technical in this press conferences, but the equipment has to be placed in there within a certain period of time, and that equipment is being enforced, or the placement of that is being enforced by the fire department, okay, because it falls under the fire code. But we benefit as a result of that.
And is that what you mean? Because I see that in the areas that work section, it talks about the radio system working as designed. And then
Right.
in the outcome section, it talks about additional investments mitigated some of the issues with radio technology. Are you talking about?
That's what I'm talking about, repeaters.
Casinos?
Yeah, and so in impromptu, say you have a large EDC. We have the ability to put a radio buffalo, for lack of a better term, out there to help with the transmission and the handling of the load of push-to-talk in those type of incidents now.
So like deploying it. for
Right,
a major
exactly.
And do you work, you said fire, is that ordinance falls under fire.
Right.
Do you work with them to ensure that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in constant conversation with Chief Castle, and there's a Gantt chart provided with those implementations. So we're 100% on evaluation in today's date. We're probably 60% on implementation. So
For those properties, say, that don't fall under the 2015 and on ordinance, is that something where you would?
is it 2015? Did I say,
Well, you said 2015, whatever the.
It might have been 05, I'm not sure.
ordinance says, is that something where you're trying to get those permanently installed at properties, or are you just having that mobile?
No, permanently installed. The NRS requires that.
Sheriff, you'd like your agency and all the agencies, both here in town and all across the country, to learn from this after-action report. What about people in our community? What do you want them to know?
That their fire department, not the fire, their police department is prepared. Their fire department is prepared. And any gaps or lessons learned that we identified, we're addressing those. I've said it in close proximity event to your police department and your fire department and your public safety and your medical professions. We are fully prepared to handle any incident that's thrown at us. You can always be better. And that's the purpose of this report. Identify the lessons learned and the gaps and better prepare yourself for the future. And this becomes a document that is based on policy and procedure on how you conduct yourselves versus an individual such as me, as your elected sheriff, not being here tomorrow, okay? So everybody speaks with the same voice and not an individual. So.
Sheriff, just to.
One more question. Ken, you're last.
Boy, this one isn't. Are there any other reports coming from your department or others that you know of that we could learn about?
Say that again. Start over with
Any
that
other
one.
reports coming from your agency or others about 1 October?
I'm not aware of any, Ken.
So this closes the book.
I believe this closes the book on that. I mean, obviously, we still don't know the reasons why, but this closes the book in practicality of 1 October. it'll never close the book for our victims and the people that suffer as a result of it. But an evaluation of the event and investigation of the event, all practical purposes, it closes it. So and additionally, to build on that, Ken, is the Family Resource Center is still fully operating and active. We anticipate 2 more years available funds on a grant for the Family Resiliency Center, and then through negotiations or discussions with Barbara Buckley, she's attempting to make that a permanent facility through funding mechanisms through the county. So we can help people in any type of crime outside of 1 October. We found that to be a good model in dealing with people that are dealing with grief and issues and PTSD and anything else you could imagine post-event, and giving them resources to draw upon to help them get through their troubles. Any questions of Captain McMahill or Stephanie?
Just one question. I want to know in the review, you include like procedures, how to work with private security of the hotels or places where a big event is made.
You're going to have to help me with that question. Can you?
Yes, I want to know if there is like any, in the reviews, there are like any procedure that is implemented on how to work in the private security of the hotels or big events like the one in October 1st.
So I'll do my best to repeat that question. So the question is has there been any procedural changes how we interact with security and dealing with mass casualty events or critical incidents? Yes, absolutely. You know, I'll say first and foremost, the security professionals within the resort corridor are without question very professional. They are a force multiplier in what we do in public safety. But they are not trained similar to what we do or what we deal with on a daily basis, but we rely on them as a force multiplier. So the answer to your question, sir, is yeah, they've changed how they interact with us on a regular basis, how my officers deploy within their environment on a daily basis, knowing the ins and out of a hotel, the back corners and back rooms, and how do you access the emergency elevators and what's the best ingress, egress points during a critical incident. All those things that we used to do in the past, but it was strictly regulated to the area command that was responsible for those areas. Now it's the responsibility of my entire police department and, North Las Vegas and Henderson to know all the nuances with any major edifice within their responsibility. So in the security profile within the security industry has changed too. They have quick response forces, reactionary forces that they hired, and their sole purpose is to respond to critical incidents. How they conduct interaction with their customers and back of house movement of luggage, evaluation of luggage, all those different things are being put in place as we speak, and surveillance cameras increase, all those kind of things that you would think would be a benefit for their security profile. All your major corporations and casinos are doing that. Some are further ahead than others, but they see what occurred on 1 October, and they're not turning a blind eye to it. So I appreciate all the efforts they've made and the relationship they have with the police department. I said last question. Go ahead, Rachel.
I believe in the federal report and noted, it highlighted rather Metro's availability of resources, mental health resources for officers in the wake of this. And this may be in the report, but has there been any changes to those or increased availability for resources for officers in terms of mental health?
That's a good question. Are you better to answer that question, Stephanie or Kelly? Yeah, the answer is yes, but what that looks like, they would be better served answering that question. Go ahead.
So this concludes the remarks from the sheriff. I think, Sheriff, you've probably
Yeah,
done.
sounds good.
And if you'd
I'm
like
not
to,
trying to step away from your question, but
But I'm gonna
they're
have
better served to answer.
Captain McMahill and Officer Ward, who authored the report and have a lot of intimate details and can provide you a little bit deeper dig into this, can answer some of those for you,
So,
okay?
and on my way out, I first, thank you guys for being professional in how we dealt with this as a community and your profession on how we dealt with this. I think we're a best practice community as a result of this, so thank you.
Rachel, that was your question? So the answer is yes, we have gotten better. And I'll give you one of the, there's two very short examples of that. A lot of this is in the report. We now have a number that our officers can call, an actual hotline that they can call where they have immediate access to a counselor if they're in crisis. And the other interesting piece, and I see members of our police union here today, one of the recommendations in here is that we begin training our police union members to better understand and recognize when our officers are in crisis, and they're wholeheartedly on board with that. They've already begun that process. And then another piece is the way that we capture things internally now. We're able to, instead of just capturing whether or not an officer has been in an officer-involved shooting or has had 5 uses of force, now if an officer responds on something that is really devastating in nature, a car accident where children die, for example, we're able to capture that, monitor those individuals as they move throughout various supervisors within their career, so that if something starts to fester in that employee, we can track back and say, you know what, maybe it was 1 October, or maybe it was this horrific car accident that they responded to. So we have definitely begun taking steps to better monitor our officers and get them the help they need, for sure. I know I'm not the sheriff, but anything else for me?
About how many people, he sort of mentioned that there were obviously a lot of people involved in this, making this report and authoring it, but do you have an estimate on how many people?
So I do, and it's in the report, but I just have to say this, first of all. I have to thank the sheriff for giving us the ability to be part of this, because although it's the hardest thing either one of us have ever done, it's also the most honorable for both of us. Detective Ward, who is standing here today, did all the heavy lifting. She lived and breathed this report for 1.5 years. She was absolutely remarkable in the level of work she did. On top of that, keep in mind, we're just cops, so we needed help. We did enlist the assistance of the Crime and Justice Institute, great professionals that have worked with us in the past. They actually came in and did a complete review of the DOJ CNA project that we went through to determine whether or not we succeeded, and it was sustainable. On top of that, at the very end, when we finished our review, we realized that we needed an editor, someone who does this for a living and not just a cop who writes police reports. So we sent this off to a lovely lady named Noel. What's her last name? I don't know. Yekis? I'm going to get it wrong. It's in the report.
I'll spell it wrong.
So, and here's what's ironic. We sent this to Noel, who is in a completely different part of this country, and it turns out she was born and raised here. So she ended up reviewing this. We had no idea at the time. So the process was a heavy lift to include hundreds of police, fire, medical, coroner's employees that were interviewed as a part of this process. And by the way, not a single individual said no. Every single person wanted to be a part of being interviewed so that they could let their story be known.
Captain McMahill, if you wouldn't mind sharing, we have now honored more than 250 requests from law enforcement agencies around the country as well as outside of the country to come and share our lessons learned. That's also part of FEMA's deal when they come in to assist, is that they ask that you share what it is that you learned, the good and the bad. And so we've been all over. Different people here on the organization have had to go out and do presentations on 1 October so that other departments can develop their own plans in the likelihood of an active shooter situation or a mass casualty incident. But I'd like for you to share some of the conversation that took place when you went to London and spoke to law enforcement there, and just some of the things with respect to hospitality.
Absolutely. So I recently, just 2 weeks ago, got back from London where I gave 2 1 October presentations, one to about 350 armed UK police officers, another to a smaller group, about 80 of their counterterrorism folks. And it was really interesting. One of the questions that somebody had was, has 1 October impacted the overall hospitality industry? And he said that he was recently in Miami last